Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Welcome to another video. It is that time of the week again. It is a Premier League predictions video that we've got in store for you today, as yet another round of Premier League fixtures is upon us for this upcoming weekend. It is on the horizon. The season is now really starting to take shape, and there are some massive games that are coming up this upcoming weekend. And this is obviously the video where we look at each and every game, and we also predict the outcomes of each and every game. Before we get into all of that though, I would like to remind you to please like the video and also subscribe if you're new. Both things are always and very greatly appreciated. For now, let's get into the predictions. There's no lunchtime kickoff on Saturday this week, so we're going to jump straight ahead to the 3 o'clock games on Saturday. And first up, we've got Bournemouth taking on Leicester. Bournemouth, of course, drew 0-0 with Brentford last time out, which is considered a very good point considering what Brentford can do to certain teams. Whilst Leicester, of course, picked up their first victory of the season, a much-needed win. A much-needed win for the club, and for obviously Brendan Rodgers. It buys him a little bit of time to try and get things right with the Foxes after what has been a terrible start to the season with a 4-0 victory over Nottingham Forest. Like I say, that was their first victory of the season, much needed, and I think that will give them a bit of a platform now to go on and maybe put a few results together for the Foxes to try and redeem themselves for what has been a terrible start to the season. You would imagine that 4-0 would give them kind of players confidence and instill confidence and ability into this squad that obviously they can now take forward into future games. Look, the quality's always been there from Leicester. It's just been their form. Their form has been bad, but they've got a good group of players, some good talent within there, a good well-rounded group of quality players, shall we say. And I don't think you can look past them for this game. Obviously, Bournemouth can throw a bit of a spanner in the works. It isn't out of the realms of possibility that they can get something from this game. But I just think with Monday night's game, I think with the confidence that would have instilled in these players, and still the amount of quality that Leicester still have within their squad, I would imagine that Leicester will be fine in this game, and they'll make it back-to-back wins for the first time this season. That's why I'm going to go for a 3-1 Leicester win. Next up, we are at Stamford Bridge for Chelsea taking on Wolves. Of course, last time out, Chelsea managed to pull off a very, very late victory against Crystal Palace thanks to a former friend of Crystal Palace, Conor Gallagher, scoring the winning goal in the dying embers of the game. Whilst for Wolves, wasn't so great for them. It is a new era at Wolves right now, post Bruno Lage after his sacking, not even 24 hours after their latest defeat, which came at the hands of West Ham, with David Moyes' side winning 2-0 against Wolves there. Bruno Lage was then since sacked, and it kind of throws a little bit of an unknown entity into the works for this game. I always say this whenever a manager's been sacked, even if it's a temporary manager or whatever it may be. You never can tell what kind of team is going to turn up for the side that is obviously going to be managerless. We don't know if they're going to get a manager in by the time this game comes around. So there's a bit of mystery and unknown surrounding this fixture a little bit. Having said that though, I've got to go with what I can see, and obviously Graham Potter's still finding his feet as Chelsea manager. He's still getting to know his players, what his best 11 is, and so on and so forth. But with the way that Wolves have been, they've not been terrible. I said this when I talked about Bruno Lage's sacking, that I don't think Wolves have been terrible. Chelsea haven't been entirely convincing either, but I just think with the quality that Chelsea do possess, with what we know they possess and everything, I wouldn't put it past Chelsea just to be given the slight edge in this game. So I am going to go for a Chelsea victory, but I am going to say it's only going to be 2-1 to the Blues. Next up, a huge game is to play out at the Etihad Stadium. We've got Manchester City in one corner, we've got Southampton in the other corner, and I don't think you'd want to be in Southampton's position for this one. Manchester City are in red-hot form, especially. They've got probably the most informed player in Europe right now in Erling Haaland. He is absolutely killing it in the Premier League so far this season, absolutely smashing it as he helped Manchester City towards a 6-3 victory last weekend against their bitter rivals Manchester United in that Manchester derby, in which of course he scored his third hat-trick of the season. We are not even... we're not even halfway through the season, where I think we're like a quarter of the way through the season, and he is absolutely killing it right now. And like I say, you don't want to be in Southampton's position or any defender's position when trying to figure out how to deal with this guy. He is just on red hot form, and it's going to be interesting to see how Southampton can deal with it. Southampton themselves, of course, are not coming into this game in great form. They lost the last weekend to Everton, 2-1. What we do know, and what does go a little bit in Southampton's favour here, is that when they are in games that they are not expected to get anything out of, they tend to do well. Last season, against Manchester City, I think they drew to City on both occasions, home and away. We've already seen that they managed to beat Chelsea this season. They gave Manchester United a good game and were unfortunate not to get something out of that game. So we do know that Southampton tend to turn up when they're in games that they're not expected to get anything out of. However, they're not facing a team with so many informed players right now. The likes of Kevin De Bruyne, Phil Foden, Bernardo Silva's done great as well. And of course, once again, Erling Haaland is just going to be licking his lips at the prospect of getting on the score sheet yet again. Maybe not even just on the one occasion, maybe on a couple more as well. I cannot see anything other than a Manchester City win in this game. And as much as I'd love to say that the underdogs win this one, I just cannot see it. So therefore, I am going to go with a Pep Guardiola win here for his Manchester City side. And I'm going to say that City come out of this game as 3-0 winners. Next up, St James's Park plays host to Newcastle against Brentford. Newcastle, of course, 4-1 winners last weekend. Great result for them, much needed against Fulham to get them back onto a winning streak, winning ways yet again. Whilst Brentford, of course, drew 0-0 with Bournemouth. Interesting game, this one. Two teams who like to get the ball down and play some nice football. This one could be a very underrated game indeed this weekend. Could be very interesting to see which way this game goes. Could go any which way, of course. We know that Brentford can turn it on at any moment. We also know that Newcastle have some quality players in there. Miguel Almiron coming into this one in good form, scored a couple of really good goals last weekend. One was an absolute stunner, by the way. But yeah, this one could be very interesting because obviously, like I say, two teams who like to get the ball down and play some nice and attractive football. Newcastle, I think, being at home, will try and take the front foot. They'll try and be more progressive. They'll try and be a bit more dominant. Brentford will like that, and they'll try and hit them on the counter-attack. And, of course, they have the players to really cause some damage there. Underrated game of football, could go any which way. If it was on TV, I'd be looking forward to probably watching this one, as it could be a very exciting one. But my prediction is that I would give Newcastle just the edge. I think Newcastle may just get the edge in this one. Wouldn't be surprised at a draw. Wouldn't be completely surprised if Brentford managed to steal a win. But I'm going to go with Newcastle to win. I'm going to say that the Magpies come out of this one as 2-1 winners. Next up, Saturday's evening kickoff, is at the Amex Stadium. It is Brighton at home hosting Tottenham. This one could be a very interesting game. You've of course got Brighton, who are still under their new manager, still finding their feet under their new manager, a new era kicking off at the Amex Stadium. They obviously handed him a very entertaining debut, shall we say, in the Premier League with a 3-3 draw against Liverpool last weekend in what could have been worse for Brighton, but it also could have been better as well. But an entertaining 3-3 draw it was that played out there. While Tottenham, of course, want to be bouncing back from their dismal display in the North London derby last week, in which they lost 3-1 to Arsenal. You've got two sides here that like to play contrasting styles of football. You've got Brighton, who probably will look to be on the front foot, try and look to play some nice and attractive football as they usually do. Of course, their new manager's still trying to find his feet in the Premier League and with Brighton, so that could be interesting to see how that plays out, of course, and whether or not he tries to change the style of player at all or anything. Whilst for Tottenham, of course, I've not been entirely convinced. I'll say it again. I've not been entirely convinced by Tottenham this season. Couple of good performances here and there. Obviously, many good results, but at the same time, I just think it's. I'm not convinced by it. I'm not convinced it's long-lasting or self-sustaining or anything along them lines about their style of play or about how good they are when Tottenham fans continue to tell me that they're amazing, that they're this, they're that, they're the other. I'm just not entirely convinced by it right now. Not saying that I won't be in a few games' time if they actually do change it a little bit and maybe get better performances going or whatever it may be, but I'm just not entirely convinced by Spurs currently. This one could be interesting though. Two teams who like to get the ball down and play. Two teams who, two teams who have contrasting styles of football. One will be on the front foot. I imagine Brighton being the home team will be on the front foot, and Tottenham will look to try and counter that. We of course know that Brighton have got some good players at their disposal. We know that Leandro Trossard will probably be fancying his chances of getting on the score sheet yet again following his hat-trick last week against Liverpool, but they've also got Pascal Gross and Alex McAllister and Danny Welbeck in the squad, whilst also Spurs have the usual suspects in Son Heung-min and Harry Kane especially, who will be looking to once again get on the score sheet. Game that could go any which way. Brighton have the opportunity to really sting Tottenham here, whilst Tottenham, of course, will be looking at this game and thinking that they fancy their chances in. And, of course, if they want to progress and they want to continue to grow under Antonio Conte, this is the kind of game that maybe they should be winning, despite, of course, Brighton being currently sat in a top 4 place. A game that could go any which way, but I am going to call it down the middle. I'm going to say that this game will end in a draw, and I'm going to say that this game will end 2-2 come the final whistle. Now move on to Sunday's games, and first up we are at Selhurst Park. It's Crystal Palace taking on Leeds. Another interesting game at our disposal on Sunday. Obviously, we know about Palace and how it was unfortunate on them that a former friend in Conor Gallagher broke their hearts last week with a last-gasp winner against Chelsea. 2-1 it finished to the Blues on that day. And we know about Leeds drawing 0-0 in that goalless stalemate with Aston Villa on Sunday. This one is going to be an interesting fixture. It's going to be a hostile atmosphere at Selhurst Park. We know that. We know that obviously Palace and their fans like to get up for their home games. Leeds, on the other hand, need a win. Both sides really need a win, actually. I mean, obviously, it sounds daft in saying that, but of course, I think it's much needed for certain teams than others because of how much pressure they're coming under. Could be an interesting one. We know, obviously, I think again it's another case of attack versus counter-attack. Palace will like to get the ball down and play some football, while Leeds may be looking to try and hit them on the counter-attack. Could be a very intriguing game on our hands on Sunday. If I had to pick a winner, I'd probably go for Palace. A draw wouldn't surprise me, but I think I am going to stick with that Palace prediction and say that Palace come out of this one as 2-1 winners. Next up, a London derby to play out at the London Stadium. We've got West Ham in one corner, we've got Fulham in another corner. This one could be a very feisty encounter, to say the least. West Ham, of course, picked up another win last weekend with a 2-0 victory over Wolves. A great victory for them, whilst Fulham were absolutely battered by Newcastle in that 4-1 defeat there. Fulham looking to get back onto winning ways. West Ham looking to make it back-to-back wins. Could be a very intriguing game, of course. I don't know whether Fulham just had a one-off last week, but they've been very good so far this season. We know that. We know about their physical and direct style of play. And we know that West Ham will have to deal with that. We also know that West Ham will be in action midweek in the Europa Conference League. So maybe that could play a bit of a factor in how this game may go. Maybe the extra minutes in the legs will kind of carry over for West Ham and maybe play towards Fulham's advantage. It's a lot to kind of take in for this one. Could be very intriguing as to which way this game goes. I reckon it could go any which way, to be honest. Like I say, we know how Fulham have played this season. We know that West Ham haven't been at their best. But of course, that could all change because they do have the quality to change that at any given moment. As far as a prediction goes, I could see West Ham winning it. I can definitely see West Ham winning it. But I'm going to call it down the middle again. I'm going to go for a draw. I'm going to say that this game will end 1-1. Come the final whistle. Next up, we've got a Sunday night game which will see Everton at Goodison Park taking on Manchester United. Intriguing game, this one. Everton made it back-to-back wins last time out in the Premier League with a 2-1 victory over Southampton, whilst Manchester United, of course, will be looking to bounce back from Derby Day defeat, a 6-3 Derby Day defeat to Manchester City last Sunday. Another intriguing one, you've got Everton right now who are on a 2-game winning streak, which is pretty good by their standards and by Frank Lampard's standards. So maybe there is something in that can obviously carry them forward and give them a bit of confidence in this game. But you've got a Manchester United side who will be looking to obviously bounce back from last week's horrible Derby Day defeat. There is obviously the case that United will be in Europa League action this week, so maybe again, like I mentioned with the West Ham thing, maybe the extra minutes in the legs might carry them over, or depending on how Erik ten Hag rotates his squad, it depends on that score. But it could be very intriguing to find out how that kind of goes. Obviously, United do have the quality, and United do have the match winners, and United should be winning this game anyway. But you kind of get the feeling that maybe Everton can pull off something. And at Goodison Park, they usually tend to be a thorn in United's side. A draw certainly isn't out of the realms of possibility. But I am going to stick with United to win because I think that they have the edge in quality and the better match winners and everything along those lines. So I am going to stick with United to win. I'm going to go for a 2-1 Manchester United win. The penultimate game on this list sees Monday night's fixture between Nottingham Forest and Aston Villa take centre stage at the City Ground. A proper cross Midlands clash here. Forest, of course, are in desperate need of a victory. They're rock bottom of the table. They are on a big losing streak right now. Whilst Aston Villa will certainly be fancying their chances. Of course, they had a goalless draw with Leeds last time out, but they were fancying their chances of getting a win in this game to kind of ease the pressure a little bit that Steven Gerrard has been coming under these past few weeks or so. Like I say, for Forest, I'll say it again, going forward, they sometimes can be pretty decent, but defensively they're all over the place. I've noticed with Forest that once they tend to leak one goal, another one tends to follow almost instantly. That is exactly the story that happened at Leicester last week. I cannot look past Villa for this game. As much as I want to say like this one could be very interesting, this one could be Forest's time to really shine, and maybe at the City Ground, maybe with the fans up for it, maybe a hostile atmosphere could play out. I just think that Villa may just have the edge in the attacking third to get them across the line here, and I think that with Forest defence just looking completely in disarray and all over the place and everything along those lines, I just think Villa may have the edge in this game. So I'm going to go for a Villa win. I'm going to say that Villa come out of this game as 2-1 winners. And finally, in what I believe to be the biggest game of this round of fixtures, the biggest highlight of the upcoming weekend's round of Premier League fixtures, it is at the Emirates. It is Arsenal taking on Liverpool, a Premier League classic. And of course, given the current situation of things, a massive test for both sides. You've got Arsenal at home, you've got Arsenal top of the league, you've got Arsenal that are in absolutely scorching hot form right now, playing some incredible football, high on confidence. They are playing out of their skin right now, and they will be fancying their chances against this Liverpool side. Don't get me wrong, because obviously of the form that Liverpool are in right now, and of course the fact that Arsenal don't tend to do well against Liverpool, especially not in recent years at least, but they'll be definitely fancying their chances in this game against the Liverpool side who are having to travel away to London to face them. A Liverpool side that are not in the best of form. They haven't quite hit their highest gear yet. They haven't quite took to the Premier League as well as they would have liked and hoped to. And of course that was typified last week with that 3-3 draw against Brighton. They did obviously redeem themselves midweek against Rangers in the Champions League, but that was of course Rangers. This is Arsenal. Different kettle of fish, different competition. This one is going to be very, very intriguing to say the least. And look, I look at it like this. Obviously, I want to back Liverpool to win. I want to back my team to win. But I'm going to be open and honest and be real about the situation. I'm a little bit worried about this one. Arsenal are in fantastic form. Arsenal are in some great form right now. And I just think that the likes of Gabriel Jesus, for example, terrifying that Liverpool defence, because the Liverpool defence is not strong. It's leaky. It's poor. They look like they've not really played together much, even though that defence has not changed or not properly changed at least in a few years. Gabriel Martinelli is going to be fancying his chances up against Trent Alexander-Arnold. On the other side of things, you've got Saka against Shimikas. You've got a midfield of Granit Xhaka, who's a completely different player this season, and Thomas Partey, who's looking pretty strong and resolute and seems to be finding his feet in the Premier League. It's looking good for Arsenal, and it's looking like they can really take the game to Liverpool, and they really fancy their chances against this Liverpool side, which is terrifying me, because although that Liverpool obviously can turn on the quality and can turn on the ability and everything, I am a little worried that maybe this is the game that Arsenal gets something out of. I still think Liverpool aren't to be completely cast away and it be a foregone conclusion, which is why I think Liverpool may be able to get something out of this game. I think maybe the bigger and rising challenge may make Liverpool rise to the challenge, and I think that maybe they'll fancy their chances as well in a weird way against this Arsenal backline, which isn't exactly watertight. They do have a couple of weaknesses in there, mainly Gabriel, of course, and maybe if the slight change of formation that we saw midweek against Rangers carries over into this game, maybe it could give Arsenal some food for thought. But either way, it's going to be a great game. It's going to be a fantastic game of football to watch against two teams with high intense football. I'm looking forward to it as a neutral, as a Liverpool fan. I'm a little bit worried, but at the same time, I think that Liverpool can get something from this game, which is why I'm going to say that this game will end 2-2 come the final whistle. But of course, as I always say, these are the thoughts, comments, opinions, and most of all, of course, predictions of this guy. I want to know what you guys think. What do you make of all the games that are coming up in this upcoming round of Premier League fixtures? What are your own thoughts, comments, and most of all, of course, predictions on what will happen this weekend? Of course, leave them down below in the comment section, because that's what it's there for. I'd love to know your thoughts, comments, opinions, and most of all, of course, predictions down there as well. Fantasy football managers, of course, if you have any thoughts on this weekend as well, who are you seeing having a good week, who do you see having a bad week, who are you putting into your team, who are you taking out of your team, that kind of stuff as well, that would be welcome to read down below in the comment section as well. But most of all, of course, we're on about your predictions for all of the 10 games that are coming up this weekend. That will all make interesting reading as well. Otherwise, hit that like button on the way. If you enjoyed the video, subscribe if you're new and want to see more content like this. Both things are always greatly appreciated. And as always, thank you all so much for watching and listening. I've been Fletch. This has been another Premier League prediction show, and I will see you all again soon in another video.